Hey, what's up YouTube? This is the Mermail Master coming at you from the Team Time Riders Yugioh channel with a special deck profile today. Continuing along the theme of doing anime deck profiles, today's casual deck is a deck run by none other than Yu-Gi-Oh! GX's Thelonious Viper himself. Professor Viper was a professor who was not above using scare tactics as well as a variety of different capital punishment or corporeal punishment means in order to make sure that the students followed his will. And his Venom deck was pretty much a way to do that by slowly burning away your opponent's attack power as well as their monsters using the power of Venom Swamp, which is kind of just like the biobands that slowly sapped the students of dueling energy and made them into zombies, as well as venom counters, which slowly wear down your opponent's strategies. This venom strategy is a force to be reckoned with once it gets going. Granted, venom monsters require a lot of setup, so this is a perfect deck to give, maybe your little brother or someone who's first getting into the game a suitable challenge. And something that, like, when they finally prevail against this deck, like, they can feel a real sense of accomplishment of having beaten something this annoying and this tough to deal with. So yeah, let me just get into the deck profile and I'll explain the choices along the way. So the first card I have in the deck is 2 copies of Venom Serpent. Let me get out of the way the idea of venom counters first. So venom counters, when you equip to once per turn, this monster can place a venom counter on one monster your opponent controls. And a lot of the venom monsters you'll find have low attack powers because of this ability. Combined with Venom Swamp, allows your opponent to have their monsters lose 500 attack for every single venom counter on them. And when the monster has enough venom counters on it and loses all its attack power goes to 0. So you'd be surprised at how fast your opponent's monster's attacks can drop, and how easy it can be to sometimes beat over them with something like Venom Serpent. Next, we got 2 copies of the Venom Snake. This guy has 200 higher attack power, but whenever you place a Venom counter on, this card cannot attack during that turn. So, it's okay, but not as good as Serpent in my opinion. The next card is none other than 3 copies of Venom Boa. And Venom Boa is really, really good because instead of 1 counter, he gives you 2. Unfortunately, he's an Earth type monster instead of a Dark type, so there's no transmodifying up from Venom Serpent into him, which is kind of unfortunate. But even though he's a level 5 with only 1600 attack, those 2 venom counters mean 1000 points of attack power being lost by your opponent's monsters each turn from those 2 counters. Next, 2 copies of Venom Cobra for basically acting as a clayman and giving you some necessary defense power in the deck. And now for the boss monsters. One of the interesting things about Venoms is that even though their main deck monsters are very, very weak, some of their boss monsters predate a lot of the protection effects that were occurring way back in the day. And that is none more apparent in the 3 copies of Venomenon, the king of poisonous snakes. And this guy is a level 8 2 tribute monster with 0 attack and defense, but gains 500 for every single reptile monster in your graveyard, which is super, super awesome of an effect. And this guy, if you get a lot of reptiles in there, can encroach very, very high attack values. And when he's destroyed by battle, you can just special summon him back to your field in attack position or defense position by banishing a reptile from your grave. So granted, he does get weaker, but his revival effect is not once per turn, and you can just keep using that ability. The upgraded form of Venomenon is none other than Venomenaga, the deity of poisonous snakes. Viper's best monster, and one of the game winner monsters. For a while back in Tactical Evolution, this was the hardest secret rare to pull. Before this particular reprint in the Raw Yellow Mega Pack was fetching over $80 for the card. Now, Venomenaga has the ability that it's unaffected by your opponent's card effects, and gains 500 attack power for every single Venom counter in your for every single reptile monster in your graveyard, and it's unaffected by Venom Swamp, as well as Phenomenon. So two very, very good monsters, and when this card attacks your opponent and inflicts damage, you get to place a Hyper Venom counter on it. 3 Hyper Venom counters on this monster from the damage it inflicts, and you win the game. So a alternate win condition right there. Very, very strong monster that in any other archetype, like this thing is like the Clifford Towers, but it's very tough to get on the field. Requires a specific trap card, and for Phenomenon to be destroyed by a card effect, not by battle, by a card effect, in order to trigger this effect. So it has much of the same abilities, but it's a very strong monster. Next, we have 2 copies of Double Coston, which counts as 2 monsters for the tribute summon of a dark type monster. So it makes this monster much easier to get out on the field. 1 copy of Razor Lizard for attacking over face-down defense position monsters or face-up defense position monsters when you switch their battle positions. There's some cards in the deck that I can show you that get that going as well. And the final monster of the deck is a copy of Evil Dragon Ananta, one of the other monsters that Viper used in order to subjugate Jaden in their duel. Evil Dragon Ananta is a powerful beast of destruction that you can special summon to your field by banishing all reptile monsters on your field and in your graveyard, and he gains 600 attack for every single one banished. So your opponent takes out your Phenomenon or your Phenomenaga, you just basically special summon Evil Dragon Ananta, keep putting the pressure on. And he also has another effect that during each turn, destroy 1 card on the field. And this is a mandatory effect, but can still inflict a lot of damage if your opponent cannot get this card off the field. So that's it for the monsters. Moving on to the spells and traps. For our spells, we're starting off things with 3 Venom Swamp. You want to see this in your opening hand 100% of the time. And this effect is basically the reason why you run the Venom deck. And your monsters your opponent control lose 500 attack for each Venom counter on it. And during any player's end phase, you can place 1 Venom counter on each monster. Except for Venom monsters or like Phenomenon or Phenomenaga. And if a monster's attack goes to 0 with this effect while Venom Swamp is on the field, that monster automatically is destroyed. Next is 3 copies of Molten Escape. Once per turn, you can prevent a monster you control from being destroyed by battle, and the equipped monster gains 300 attack at the end of the damage step for each time this effect is applied. So basically protecting once per turn and then gaining attack power, so protecting your Phenomenon and Phenomenaga and all that stuff from being destroyed by that battle. Next is 2 copies of Venom Shot. Now, you can only activate this when you control a face-up Venom monster, Phenomenon, or Phenomenaga, and you can send 1 reptile monster from your deck to the graveyard, thereby increasing the attack and the threshold, which is super good, and then place 2 Venom counters on a face-up monster your opponent controls. In any other reptile deck or in any other archetype, this would be a broken card, and it's a fantastic piece of support for the Venom archetype. 1 Solidarity, since everything's reptile and more attack is always a good thing. And then finally, the card that you can use with the Razor Lizard, and that's 1 card Rotator. I'd run this over Earthquake simply because of the discard effect that you get on the field when you rotate those cards, loading your graveyard with an extra Venom Boa or reptile monster that you have in your hand that you're not using, and helping to gain your monster's attack powers. That's it for the spells. Now moving on to the traps. For traps, we have 3 copies of Venom Burn. Venom Burn allows you to burn all Venom counters on a specific monster on the field and inflict 700 points of damage for each Venom counter removed. So you have a 2000 attack monster with 4 Venom counters, remove them all, and your opponent takes 2800 points of damage Granted, their attack powers will go back up, but this is great if you don't have Venom Swamp and your opponent just has a monster with a bunch of Venom counters that aren't doing anything. Venom Burn can get rid of them and inflict some serious damage to your opponent. 3 copies of Ambush Fangs. This is one of my favorite traps in the deck because you basically, if you control a Venom monster, you negate your opponent's monster's attack and then place 1 Venom counter on the monster that attacked. Very, very good card. I think the traps in this deck are super awesome. 3 copies of the Snake Whistle. And the Snake Whistle is a fantastic card that when your reptile monster you control is destroyed, you can special summon 1 level 4 or lower reptile monster straight from your deck. So basically, a quick way to replace your monster is kind of like a hero call of some sorts. 3 copies of Rise of the Snake Deity helps to trigger when Phenomenon is destroyed, special summons Phenomenaga from your deck. Very, very awesome card. Gotta run this at 3 so you can see it as much as possible. And then for the final card of the deck is 1 Damage Equals Reptile. Out of all the trap cards in here, this is one of my favorite, and this is because your Phenomenon can be summoned from your deck and has 0 attack. So any amount of damage, you flip Damage Equals Reptile and special summon Phenomenon from your deck. You have a Rise of the Snake Deity set. You're able to pop that Phenomenon, even if it's by his own effect, and special summon something else. So with that finishes the deck profile of my Venom deck. I really hope that you guys enjoyed this. If you did, please feel free to give a like, comment, and subscribe. And looking forward to doing more casual deck profiles just like this on the channel. Keep it stuck to Team Time Riders, guys, and this has been the Mermail Master, signing out. See you guys.